Chant and dance as much as possible in this human form of life.
Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chikshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutha Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadhi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha Ananda Leelamaya Vigrahaya Hemavadivya Chavisundaraya Tasmai Mahaprema Rasapradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. Hare Krishna. So I welcome all the devotees. After quite some time, we have not had our weekly discussions for more than 2 weeks, I think. So I welcome all the devotees who have kindly joined today on a Sunday morning to discuss the glories of the Supreme Lord and his devotees of Hari Katha and Hari Kirtan. So with this endeavor, I would want to present today's discussion. Whatever I will be speaking are from the works of Srila Prabhupada and predecessor Acharya. So if there is anything good that comes up in the complete discussion, the credit goes to Srila Prabhupada and predecessor Acharyas, and naturally there will be faults in the presentation because the person presenting is a conditioned jiva. So if there are any faults in the presentation, as Saragrahi Vaishnavas, I kindly request all of you all to keep the negatives to the side and just take the essence. So with this, I'll just like to share my screen. Yes. Can someone confirm whether they can see the screen?
Yeah, I can see it, Prabhuji.
Thank you. So this morning, we are reading from the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is entitled The Signs of God, the Signs of Bhagavan. And this is the 6th chapter. So in the 7th canto, we would be knowing that the whole 7th canto, the majority chunk of the 7th canto deals with the pastime of Narsinghadev and Prahlāda Mahārāja. And this is the 6th chapter that Shukadev Goswami presents from that narration. And it's very interesting. This chapter is titled as Prahlāda Mahārāja instructs his demoniac friends. So interesting. Prahlāda Mahārāja is instructing his demoniac friends. Why demoniac? Well, because Prahlāda Mahārāja, the friends that he had, the school that he went, all those friends, they were taking side with Hiranyakashipu, who was averse to Bhagavan, who was averse to Vishnu. So that is why the title is given as the demoniac friend. So Prahlāda Mahārāja, like their guru, like a good friend, like Suridam, the best friend, is instructing all his friends. And this is very relevant because all the devotees who are there on the call are all youth who all go to school. And this makes perfect sense because Prahlāda Mahārāja is also discussing this with his friends in the school. So it's like the perfect atmosphere. He's discussing this with his friends and it's in the school. So it's very much relatable. That is the reason I thought of taking this verse because the youth are there in this call. So Canto 7, Chapter 6, Text 1. Shri Prahlāda Uvacha Kaumara Acharet Pragyo Dharman Bhagavatan Iha Durlabham Manusham Janma Tadapi Adruvamartadam. One more time. Shri Prahlāda Uvacha Kaumara Acharet Pragyo Dharman Bhagavatan Iha Durlabham Manusham Janma Tadapi Yadruvamartadam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Prahlāda Mahārāja said, one who is sufficiently intelligent. So if we just go up, it says Prahlāda Uvacha, which means Prahlāda Mahārāja said. One who is sufficiently intelligent. Intelligent means pragya, or the word used is pragnyo. One who is sufficiently intelligent should use this human form of body from the very beginning of life, from a tender age, which means. And he uses the word Kaumara. So Kaumara is that age. It is from 0 to 5. That age is called as Kaumara in Sanskrit. Many times in the 10th canto also we find that Krishna is addressed as Kaumara. And today is the day when Krishna transforms from being Kaumara. He enters the age of 6, and from taking care of the calves, now Nanda Maharaj has given him the responsibility of taking care of the cows. So Krishna has now become a big boy on this day. So the transition of Kaumara, from Kaumara to Pauganda. Pauganda means 6 to 10. So Kaumara means 0 to 5. Pauganda means 6 to 10. And 10 onwards till 16 is called as Kaishor Leela. So this is how the classification is done in Sanskrit. So Prahlāda Mahārāja doesn't use the word Pauganda, nor does he use the word Kaishora. He is making his point crystal clear. When should one start bhakti? Kaumara. From the age of 0 to 5. No wasting time. Start bhakti as soon as possible. Kaumaram acharet pragyo dharman bhagavata iha. In other words, from the tender age of childhood to practice the devotional service, giving up all other engagements. So devotional service here means dharman bhagavata iha. Prahlāda Mahārāja is saying from a tender age, someone who is very intelligent, someone who is very knowledgeable, someone who is very wise will not waste their time, but will make every endeavor to do what? Dharman bhagavata iha, to perform devotional service. So someone can have this question, why should I perform devotional service? And why from childhood? Why not at the fag end? And what is so glorious about devotional service? Why should I do it? So he says, Durlabham Manusham Janma, because, oh readers, oh friends, because he's speaking to his friends. So he's saying, oh friends, Durlabham Manusham Janma. Human life is extremely rare. It's very difficult to obtain. Now, many times we would have heard this phrase that human life is extremely difficult to obtain. Now, in the next 5 minutes or so, we will mathematically prove how human life is extremely rare with the help of Shastra. So Prahlāda Mahārāja is making this point. Durlabham Manusham Janma. Human life is very rare. And the human body is rarely achieved. And although temporary, which means adhruvam arthadam, it's very temporary. It is impermanent. It is temporary like the other bodies, but it is meaningful because in human form of life, one can perform devotional service. Such an important point. It is meaningful because in human life, one can perform devotional service. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection. I repeat, even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection. Who is saying this? Prahlāda Mahārāja. Who is Prahlāda Mahārāja? One of the 12 Mahājans. So the person who's speaking is not just a 5-year-old, but is someone who is self-realized and has a very prominent place in the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So every word that Prahlāda Mahārāja is speaking, he's in shooting arrows in the air, he's in shooting arrows in mid-air, but he's speaking out of realizations. And he is making such an important point. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection. And when should one start devotional service? Kaumara, from the age of 0 to 5. Why? Because pragya, if someone is intelligent, he will start devotional service from the age of Kaumara, because human life is temporary. And durlabham, it is rarely achieved. So human life is temporary, it is rarely achieved. And for this reason, Prahlāda Mahārāja says, if someone is sufficiently intelligent and smart, he will not wait till the fag end of life to perform bhakti, but he will start from the tender age of 0 to 5 to please, to beseech the Supreme Lord Bhagavan. Such a beautiful verse. Canto 7, chapter 6, text 1. We will read the verse once again and then we will start our discussion. Shri Prahlāda Uvacha Kaumara Acharet Pragyo Dharman Bhagavata Iha Durlabham Manusham Janma Tad Api Yadruvamarthadam. Jai. Prabhupada gives a very beautiful purport, but I will keep the purport as homework. All of y'all, after the discussion is done, y'all can read the purport and the whole purport will make sense after the discussion. We will understand what Srila Prabhupada is trying to convey to us through the teachings of Prahlāda Mahārāja, who is one of the 12 Mahājans. So I'll stop my screen sharing. Yes. So very, very beautiful verse coming from the 7th canto. And Prahlāda Mahārāja is emphasizing on this point that bhakti means starting from Kaumara. In Sanskrit language, it's so beautiful that it is said someone who doesn't perform bhakti, someone who doesn't perform devotional service, that person is called as Dvi Pada Pashu. Dvi means 2, Pada means feet, and Pashu means animal. Someone who doesn't perform bhakti is called as a 2-legged animal, Dvi Pada Pashu. And this is not as far as Shastra is concerned. This is as far as basic vocabulary of Sanskrit. Dvipada Pashu. Someone who doesn't perform bhakti is called as a 2-legged animal. So many times we have heard that human life is extremely rare. Prahlāda Mahārāja is making the same point. Durlabham manusham janma. Human life is extremely rare. And we all are aware that there are 8.4 million species. Types of species, not the population, but there are 8.4 million types of species, which in Indian math corresponds to 84 lakh. So now the Padma Puran gives a very beautiful classification. Now, if you're attentive for the next 5 minutes or so, we can mathematically prove the point that how human life is a rare phenomena. And believe me, this will just bring up so much appreciation. We will congratulate ourselves, we will pat our back for getting a human form of life. So the Padma Puran, it says, Jalaja Navalakshani. So a classification is made. We see, we all have seen a pyramid. How is a pyramid? The pyramid is sharp at the top. The apex is sharp. It's sparsely populated, while the bottom, the base, is broad. It's densely populated. So just for your imagination, have a pyramid in your head. Now the Padma Puran says, Jalajana Valakshani. A classification is made. What is the classification? It says there are Nava Laksha. So Laksha means lakh in the Indian math, and Nava means 9. Jalaja Nava Laksha. Oh, there are 9 lakh aquatic types. There are 9 lakh types of aquatics, not the population. Types, there are 9 lakh types of aquatics. Like, for example, when we switch on the National Geographic or Animal Planet or any of those animal shows, we find there are so many aquatics ranging from a crocodile to a whale to a shark to a blue whale to an octopus to a fish. There are so many aquatics. So Padma Puran says there are 9 lakh types of aquatics. Jalaja Nava Lakshani, Sthavaram Laksha Vimshati. And how many trees? 20 lakh trees. There are 20 lakh types of trees. We have a palm tree, we have a coconut tree, we have a rosewood tree. And there are so many examples that way. In India, in America, and around the world, there are different types of trees. So Padma Puran is giving a perfect count. We see the Shastra never beats around the bush. It always gives a perfect reason. It always gives a perfect math for everything. So it says 9 lakh aquatics types. Similarly, as far as trees are concerned, 20 lakh. What is left? Animals, 30 lakh animals. So how much have we finished? 9 lakh plus 20 lakh plus 30 lakh, which makes it 59 lakh types are almost done now, which means 5.9 million in the American math, or 59 lakh. Now what is left? The birds are left. Oh, the Padma Puran says there are 10 lakh birds. So now what is the math? 69 lakh, which means 6.9 million. Now what is left? Insects. Well, the Shastra say there are 11 lakh types of insects. So 69 plus 11 makes it 80 lakh, which is 8 million. So dear devotees, till now we have seen 8 million types of species. The first, aquatics. The second, the trees, 9 lakh aquatics, 20 lakh trees, 30 lakh animals, 10 lakh birds, 11 lakh insects, and the final 4 lakh are the human being, which makes it to 84 lakh or 8.4 million. Now you may have the question, 4 lakh population or 4 lakh types? The Padma Puran says 4 lakh types of human beings. There are 4 lakh types of human beings. Now naturally we will have this question. Well, when we look around, we only see one type of human being. We don't see 4 lakh types. Well, this data is based. So Shastra is always based on spirituality. Spirituality is the center, and Shastra is based on spirituality, because spirituality is the essence of devotional life. It's the essence of human life. So when we say there are 4 lakh types of human beings, it is based on spiritual realization. You see, if you have a spectrum, there are people on one end of the spectrum who are completely atheistic, and we have people on the other end of the spectrum who are completely self-realized, someone like Mahabhagat Vaishnav. So ranging from an atheist to a completely self-realized person, there are 4 lakh types in between. So that is the understanding, not the population, but the 4 lakh types ranging from an atheistic person to someone who is completely self-realized. And in this also we can have permutation and combination. There may be someone who is rich, someone who is poor, someone who is lame, someone who is deaf, someone who is dumb, someone who is blind. So along with the spiritual understanding, there can be material circumstances that we can put. And altogether, the Padma Puran says there are 4 lakh types. So now what is the math? It comes to 84 lakh or 8.4 million species all in all. That is Brahma's creation. Now, if you're good at math, we don't have to be a math wizard, but if you are good at basic math, we can do the math. How many human beings? 4 lakh types. And what is the total amount? 84 lakh. So 4 lakh by 84 lakh, what is the percentage? It comes to 4.7%. which is 0.4 million upon 8.4 million into 100. If you do the math, it comes to 4.7%, which means, dear devotees, the probability of getting a human form of life is less than 5%. It is only 4.7%. The probability of getting a human life, a Manushya Jivan, is only 4.7. And naturally, if the percentage is so less, it only means that we have paid a heavy price in our previous lives to get a human form. God doesn't play dice. It's not an H1B lottery that someone gets a human form today and someone gets a tree body next life. God doesn't play dice. So everything has a particular reason. So if we have got a human form of life, which means it is so rare, it is so difficult to obtain, because the probability, as far as the mathematical analysis that we saw, is only 4.7%. Getting a tree form, getting an animal form, getting an aquatic form is comparatively more easier than getting a human form. So the Padma Puran says, it opens our eyes by saying, those who have a human form, don't waste it, because the probability is less than 5%. You see, when we are applying to any universities, there are many on this call who in some years would be applying to some of the universities, maybe UW or Stanford or Harvard or any of those universities. And naturally, we know when we want to get into the Ivy League colleges, the best universities, the rate of acceptance is very less. It's very less, which only proves the point that this university is so high class that only those who are sufficiently qualified can enter into this school. Similarly, this human body is so rare to obtain that only those who have paid the price in the past lives, Krishna awards them a spiritual body, a human body. It doesn't happen by chance. It's not accident. The Shastra condemns Big Bang, the Big Bang theory that is there, that everything happened by chance. Shastra says nothing happens by chance. So the probability of getting a human form is just 4.7%. So rare. For this reason, Prahlāda Mahārāja is saying, Durlabham Manusham Janma. Human life is extremely rare. So this is the understanding. This is the parallels that we draw with the Padma Puran. And now, what are the facets of this human form? There are two facets. There are two salient features of getting a human form of life. The first, advanced consciousness. The consciousness level in human beings is so advanced. The Chetana that they call in Sanskrit is very advanced. Now, how do we understand this? Well, first thing, what is consciousness? Consciousness is nothing but the ability to take pains and pleasure. That's it. Period. The ability to take pains and pleasure is called as consciousness. Simple, in layman's language. So now the Shastras say the trees have the lowest consciousness. The birds have little more consciousness. The animals have little more matured consciousness. And if there is someone who has the most advanced consciousness, it is the human beings. And we can see this very easily. Why? Because you see the trees, they are standing at one place for years and decades, and for more than 100, 200, 300 years. You know, sometimes we go to some place and they say this tree has been standing here for almost 500 years. How does this happen? Well, because the consciousness level of the tree is less, because of which it can take pain and pleasure. You see, for the human beings, we can't stand. We can't even sit at one place for more than 5 minutes. Why? Because the level of consciousness is so high that we are always on the go. We are always restless. But for the trees, the level of consciousness is less, which helps them stand at one place for a long time. Likewise, we find birds who are a little more advanced than the trees. And then we find animals who are also restless. But if there is someone, if there is a species who tops the list as far as advanced Chaitana or advanced consciousness is concerned, it's the human being. So that's the first salient feature. That's the first facet. that we have advanced consciousness. And second, most important, we all unanimously agree to the fact that as far as intelligence quotient is concerned, as far as IQ is concerned, it's the human beings who are the highest. The animals, the birds, and trees are nowhere in comparison as far as the human beings are concerned. And we all agree to this fact, not just the spiritualist, but even the materialist and even the atheistic. We all agree to this fact that human beings have advanced intelligence. And this is the word that Prahlāda Mahārāja is using in the verse. If you see in the first line, he says, Kaumaram acharet pragyo. Pragnya means intelligence. So he says human beings are intelligent. And intelligence means knowing what to do right and what to not do. Refraining from the things that are bad and accepting those things that are good. Human beings have something called as Viveka Buddhi. We have the power to distinguish. We all know what is right and what is wrong. This is intelligence. And intelligence not only means knowing right and wrong, but it also means imbibing the good in our lives and rejecting the bad in our life. We see people around the world. They know what good is. They know what bad is. For example, it's public. We all know the fact that tobacco is injurious to health. It causes cancer. It destroys the lungs. We all know this fact. But still, there are people who consume tobacco. So that is not intelligence. They know what is right and they know tobacco is wrong, but still they are consuming the things that are bad. So that is not intelligence. Intelligence means you know what is right, you know what is wrong, and you are willing to accept the good in your life and kick out the things that are bad. That is intelligence. So human being is not only a rare species, it is 4.7% of probability. That's a mathematical analysis. And to add to that, we have advanced consciousness and a very advanced intelligence. So this boils down, dear devotees, to the ultimate question. Why is human life given? Why are we given this human form of life? And what is the purpose? What is the generation that we are living in? Where you see, the communication is wireless. Cooking is fireless. Food is fatless. Sweet is sugarless. Relationships are loveless. Politics is shameless. The youth are jobless. And life, all in all, is meaningless. Why is life meaningless? Because God is not there in the center. So this is not my composition. I read it somewhere. English author had presented, and I felt it makes perfect sense. Life, all in all, is meaningless. The reason being God is not there in the center. When God is kept in the center, everything makes sense. The whole puzzle is solved when God is kept in the center. But when God is kept out, then how much ever balls we juggle, we will be frustrated, we will be disappointed, we will be in anxiety, we will have lamentation, we will have all sorts of problems. And life, all in all, will become meaningless. So the other day, I was hearing a very beautiful story and I want to narrate, and such a nice story that I heard. Long time, there was a sage, a very spiritual personality who was a nice sadhu who would practice the principles of devotional service that are outlined in the Shastra. And he would go to a king. So he was living in a kingdom, and naturally he would go to the king and he would try to convince to the king. He would speak spirituality to the king. He would quote verses and try to convince the king about the aim of human life and how rare human life is. But like most people we find, when it comes to topics of this world, material topics, when it's sports or movies or Hollywood or Bollywood, people are very attentive. But the moment you quote some Shastra, they will keep some distance from you. They don't want to associate. So similarly, when the sadhu here was speaking, he was trying to convince the king, because the king is the leader. He is representing the whole kingdom. So if the king is very much devotional, then naturally his subjects, naturally the people who are living in this kingdom will also take up this path of bhakti. So the sadhu was trying to convince, and this king was very charismatic, very dynamic. But whenever the sadhu would speak anything spiritual, it would go into deaf ears. The king would not hear anything. And not that he's deaf, but he would be disinterested. He would be interested for everything of this world, but when it came to spiritual matters, he would be disinterested. So the sadhu would keep speaking, and the king would look here and there and would have no interest. And the sadhu understood this. The sadhu could read the pulse. He could touch the pulse, and he could feel the pulse of the king. So one day, the sadhu, he went up to the king and said, "Oh, my dear king, I have a suggestion for you." And the king said, "What is the suggestion?" He said, "My suggestion is I will leave your kingdom permanently." And the king was excited. He said, "You're going to leave my kingdom? That is so nice." I mean, of course, he didn't vocalize it. He kept it to his mind. But he was thinking to himself that it's so nice. If the sadhu leaves, I don't have to hear to his spiritual advices. So the sadhu said, "I will leave your kingdom, but I have a condition." So the king, he said, "What is the condition?" The sadhu, he replied by saying, "My condition is you have to make the most foolish person as your chief minister. If you make the most foolish person as the chief minister, I guarantee I will leave your kingdom." So the king said, "Hey, that's not difficult. We can find someone who's very foolish." So the sage said, "Okay, you find the most foolish person, and then I will leave your kingdom." So when the sadhu left, the king immediately called his other ministers, and he said, "Go and find the most foolish person in our kingdom and get him here." So the ministers, they said, "Okay, that should not be difficult." And they left. And the moment they left, they saw a person who was sitting on the branch and cutting the branch. He was sitting on the branch and cutting the branch. Now, what do you think would happen? The branch will fall and he's going to fall to the ground. So he was sitting on the branch and cutting. And his ministers were looking at each other and they were perplexed. And they said, "Seems like we have already found the most foolish person. We don't have to go anywhere because he's sitting on a branch and trying to cut. He's so foolish, he doesn't know that the branch will fall and he will hurt himself." So they went to this person and they said, "What are you doing?" So he said, "Don't you see I'm cutting the branch? Don't disturb me. I'm cutting the branch." So they said, "But don't you understand that you're sitting on the branch and cutting the branch? You're going to fall down. You're going to hurt yourself." This person said, "Hey, nothing like that. I'm doing my hard work. Don't disturb me. You go and do something else. I'm doing my hard work. Let me concentrate." And these ministers were laughing and chuckling and giggling, and they were thinking, "This guy is insane. He's foolish. He doesn't understand he's going to fall down." But they were just standing. They were waiting for the time when this guy is going to fall down. And naturally, what do you think happened? He was cutting the branch and bam, he fell down to the ground. And when he fell down to the ground, this person, he came to the ministers and said, "Wow, seems like y'all are astrologers. Y'all could predict that I'm going to fall to the ground. Y'all are astrologers." The ministers were thinking, this guy is the most foolish. I mean, you don't have to be an astrologer to predict this. It is basic common sense. So the ministers understood he is the most foolish person, and they held his hand and took him to the king. And the king said, "Who is he?" So the ministers, they whispered in the ear and they narrated the whole story, and the king just started laughing hearing this. And now the king had found the most foolish person. So he said, "Oh, my dear person, I want to make you the chief minister of my kingdom." So this person was excited. From being the woodcutter, from being the cutter of the tree, he was now the chief minister. So he was excited. He said, "Thumbs up. Yes, please make me the chief minister." So he was made the chief minister. And as he was made the chief minister, the king also gave a gold baton. You see, during the Olympics time, when there is running, there is the sprint that takes place 100 meter or 400 meter. Generally, when people switch from one person to another, a baton is given. Similarly, this king gave a gold baton to this chief minister and said that this baton always is held in the hand of the chief minister. So as a gift, I'm giving it to you. And the chief minister accepted. And as time passed by, he was so foolish. They would tell him to eat with the right hand, he would eat with the left hand. They would ask him to do, they would give a chronological order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he would do it completely upside down. He would do it completely topsy-turvy, and he would just keep scratching his head, and the king would be furious. He would think to himself, how can someone be so foolish? But the only solace to the heart of the king, I'm sorry, the only solace to the heart of the king was, it's better to tolerate this person. It's better to tolerate this foolish person than tolerating that sadhu. So by keeping this in his heart, he would somehow tolerate, he would bear the foolish person. And as time passed, as time went, he was extremely foolish. He was the most foolish person, not just in the kingdom, but around multiple kingdoms. And a time came, inevitable death came, and the king was in his deathbed. King was about to depart. And when the king was about to depart, all the ministers were there to the king. They were standing next to the king. And the king looked and he said, is everyone there? And they said, oh king, the chief minister is not there. So the king said, call the chief minister. So the chief minister was called. And the chief minister looked and said, hey king, where are you going? Can I come with you? Can you take me also? So the king said, no, this is a path where we go alone. We come alone and we go alone. I cannot take you. So the chief minister said, now I understand. You are taking all your wealth. That's the reason you don't want to take me, huh? The king said, don't you understand? This is death, and in death we cannot take anyone. I can't take you, nor can I take my wealth. I can take a single cent. I can take a single dollar. So the chief minister said, now I understand. The reason you don't want to take me and all your wealth is you want to take all your queens, right? You want to have some private time with them. The king was furious. He was in his deathbed. He got up and he yelled and screamed and said, don't you understand? This is the path of death. We come alone, we go alone, and we can't take anyone, not even an iota. We can't take anything. What to speak of my queens? So this chief minister said, oh king, now I understand. The reason you don't want to take me, the reason you don't want to take your wealth, the reason you don't want to take your queens is you want to take your palace, right? You want to take your infanteries, your cows and your horses and your calves. That's the reason you don't want to take me, huh? This king was irritated. He said, can someone please tell him that this is the path of death? We can't take anything. I will go alone. I can take a single thing. I can take even my cloth. What to speak of my cows and calves and the queens and the ministers and the wealth? I can take anything. At that point, the chief minister who had the gold baton, he gave the baton to the king. And now the king was furious because initially when the king gave the gold baton, he told the chief minister that whenever you find a foolish person, whenever you find someone who's more foolish than you, pass on the gold baton to him. So now the chief minister was handing over the gold baton to the king. And the king was furious. He said, do you know what you're doing? This gold baton is meant for someone who's foolish, and I am the king, and you have the audacity to give it to me? Why do you think I'm the most foolish? And why are you giving this gold baton to me? So at that point, the chief minister said, oh, my dear king, all your life, you collected that wealth that you cannot take. You collected those chief ministers whom you cannot take. You built those palaces whom you cannot take. You have so many queens and princes whom you cannot take. You have so much luxury in the form of clothes and food, which you cannot take. My dear king, all your life you collected that wealth which you cannot take, but that spiritual wealth which you can take even after death, you neglected it. The material wealth which you are convinced you cannot take, you spent hours and hours of your life. You spent every sweat, every ounce of your blood in collecting that which cannot be taken, and that spiritual wealth which can actually be taken to the next life. You made no endeavors So my dear king, you have to be the most foolish person. So now the king got up and he said, who are you? I thought you were foolish, but whatever you're speaking is not the words of a foolish person. Who are you? So now the chief minister removed all his clothing and he said, do you remember the sage who would come to your kingdom? The king said, yes, yes, I remember the sage. This chief minister said, I am his disciple. The sadhu tricked you. The moment the sadhu said that I can be replaced by the chief minister, he immediately came to me and he asked me to sit on the branch and cut the branch so that your ministers go around and they find me as the most foolish. So, O king, the sadhu tricked you. The thing that the sadhu wanted to tell you when you were alive, I am telling you at the fag end of your life. O king, you did things that cannot be taken, and that spiritual wealth which can actually be taken to the next life, you made no endeavors. The thing that my guru was about to tell, he was making endeavors to tell, I am saying the same thing. Oh my dear king, you are the most foolish person. So dear devotees, what do we learn from this? What is the moral? The moral is not that we should not become the king, nor is the moral that we should not earn. That is one part of the discussion. But the essence, the standout point from this whole discussion is, in life, there are two kinds of wealth. One is material wealth, which fades away with time. That material wealth, which we can't even take to our future lives. Every dollar, every cent that we have cannot be taken to the future lives. But there is also something called as spiritual wealth. And this spiritual wealth can be taken to the next life. Neha vikramana sosmi pratyavayo na vidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Krishna he confirms this point in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, swalpamapyasya dharmasya. If you do swalpa, little bhakti, that is never lost. We may forget with time, but Krishna's memory is so strong. Krishna never forgets. So the material wealth is lost with time. It fades away with time. But spiritual wealth is something that never fades away with time. And that is the point that is illustrated from the story. Human life means collecting spiritual wealth. That is of paramount importance. Everything else is secondary. But the first and the most important is collecting spiritual wealth, which can be taken ahead to the future lives. So Prahlāda Mahārāja in his teachings is making the same point, that he makes this point that we are all spiritual beings. We are all spirit souls. He says we are not the body, we are the spirit souls, just like Krishna makes this point. And Prahlāda Mahārāja also makes the point that as spiritual beings, when we say that I am seeing, when we say the eyes are seeing, it is not the eyes that are seeing, it's the soul that is seeing through the eyes of the body. Similarly, it's not the ears that are listening, it is the soul that is listening or hearing through the ears of the body. And likewise for the nose, and likewise for the other organs. It's the soul that is functioning through the different organs of the body. So Prahlāda Mahārāja is making this point that we are that soul. That soul is entrapped. He's trapped in this body. So we are not the body, but we are that soul which is helping function all the organs of the body. Now we take an example. Like for example, that if suppose our friend has a paper cut. He has a paper cut. And he comes up to us and says, hey, I had a paper cut. And he tells us this was the reason I had a paper cut. Or for example, he had a leg transplant or whatever it is. His hand got dislocated. So he says, I did such and such thing because of which my hand got dislocated. So now naturally when he's telling us, we start thinking that I should refrain from doing that, because if I also do that, my hand gets dislocated, right? We immediately naturally think that I should not do that, because if I do that, my hand can get cut, my leg can get cut, I can have a dislocation, I can have a chip bone fracture, so on and so forth. So the point here is, who is that person who is thinking? It's not the body that's thinking, it's the spirit soul, which only proves the point that we are distinct from the body, right? We are distinct from the body. So these are the teaching that Prahlāda Mahārāja makes in his conversation with his friends. And this is also the point that Krishna is making in the Bhagavad Gita, that we are distinct from the body. And Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita actually confirms this point by saying, Mamaivamsha jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashashtyani indriyani prakrite sthani karshati. 15:6 Gita, from the chapter of Purushottam Yoga. Krishna is making the same point that all of us are spiritual beings. We are all spirit souls. And spirit souls means it is filled with happiness and filled with knowledge. Just imagine if someone is knowledgeable but not happy, what's the use? Or on the flip side, someone is happy but not knowledgeable, what's the use? But Krishna says the quality of the spirit soul is filled with happiness and filled with knowledge. And to add to that, the spirit soul does not have birth, the spirit soul does not die, the spirit soul has no old age, the spirit soul has no disease, it doesn't get moist, it cannot be burnt with fire, it cannot be withered by air. The spirit soul is permanent. It cannot be destructed by these material transformations. So now naturally, because we are that spirit soul, we do not have birth, we do not have death, we do not have disease, and we do not have old age. But the body is made of matter. Now just see the paradox. We are the spirit soul which does not have Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. But the body is made of matter. And we know the body has birth, it has death, it has disease, it has COVID-19, and there are so many other diseases, and it has old age. So the body goes through these transformations, but because we are the soul, we are permanent. We do not have those transformations. And because now the soul is trapped in the body, which is going through multiple transformations, that is the reason we are unhappy. Our tendency is not to take a birth or death or old age or disease, but because the body has all these transformations and we are trapped in this body, that is why we are unhappy. That is why we are disappointed. That is why we are frustrated. That is why we have anxiety. This is simple logic. We are that spirit soul which does not have Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, but the body has Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. And because the soul is trapped in this body, we are also having all these transformations, and that is the reason the soul is unhappy. Angam galitam palitam mundam dashana vihina jatha tundam vriddho yasi grihitva dandam tadapina munchati asha pindam. Such a beautiful verse. It says angam galitam. You see, when age progresses, especially those 50s, 60s, 70s, angam galitam, the skin becomes wrinkled. You have all kinds of advertisements, facelifts and Fair and Lovely, and so many advertisements that are there. Angam galitam, the skin has become wrinkled. And angam galitam palitam mundam. This is completely mundam. It's like a shining moon. It's like a complete shining sun. So this is completely empty. The skin is wrinkled. Dashana vihina jata tundam. We start with 32. If there's a wisdom, it's 33. But at the end, 60, 70, 80 is like 2-3 teeth here, 2-3 here, 1 or 2 down. It's like completely empty. All the 32, 33 teeth that we had is completely gone. Everything is gone with time. So angam galitam, palitam mundam, dashana vihina jata tundam, vriddho yasi grihitva dandam. And when someone becomes old, from 2 legs, he has 3 legs, which means he has a stick. So this is the predicament. Our body keeps changing constantly, and something that keeps changing constantly cannot be our identity. Identity has to always be constant, but the body keeps changing. We had a body when we were 1 year old. Then the body changes when we are 10 years. Then the body changes when we are 25. The body changes when we are 30, and it goes on. So throughout we see the body keeps on changing, and something that keeps on changing cannot be our identity. We see, like for example, my name is Arjun Sakha Dasa. Now that is the identity. But we cannot have today, oh, 1 week Arjun Sakha Dasa. By the time it's Christmas, my name is something else. And after Christmas, the first few weeks of January, my name is something else. That is not identity. Identity means something that is constant. And the body keeps changing constantly, which only proves that we are not the body. Because something that changes is not our identity. Identity means something that is permanent. And the soul is something that is permanent. It has no birth, no old age, no disease, no death, and it is always eternal. And Krishna says that is our identity. That is our true identity. So for this reason, dear devotees, Prahlāda Mahārāja is starting the verse by saying Kaumaram. That is why start bhakti in Kaumara from the age of 0 to 5. Because it is said the bhakti that is performed in the age in childhood. Most of you all are in the phase of childhood, less than 18. So it said that bhakti that is performed in childhood, it's like gold, invaluable, priceless. Because the senses are perfect, the eyes, nose, ears, hands, legs, intelligence, strength, energy is everything first class. It's at the highest level possible. So Prahlāda Mahārāja is making the point that the bhakti performed at Kaumar Avastha, in childhood is like gold. The bhakti that is performed in middle age is like silver. The bhakti that is performed from middle age to old age is like bronze, and the bhakti that is performed in old age is like stone. During the fag end of life, we can't see, we can't hear, we can't talk, we can't walk, we have arthritis, we have Parkinson's, we have Alzheimer's. Is that the time when we are going to start the process for which the human life is given? No. Dear devotees, that is criminal waste of human life. Krishna gives this human life so that we can start start the process of bhakti from a very small age. Not at the fag end of life when we can't even remember anything. You see, a few weeks back or a few months back, there was one image that surfaced in Facebook and many social platforms. And I'm pretty sure all of you all would have seen. There was a photo where it was a black and white photo. And one old man, 85-year-old, was holding the hand of his wife. I think many of you all would have seen it. He was holding the hand of his wife. And I was intrigued to see what's the story. So I was just going through it. And one devotee had shared. And it said that the husband and the wife have been married for 50 years. They have been married for 50 years, but now, unfortunately, for the last 2 or 3 years, the wife has Alzheimer's. So Alzheimer's is something that, our memory is volatile. We forget everything. We forget everything, including the name, including the place, including the address. We forget every single thing. So she has Alzheimer's, and the husband is holding her hand so that she doesn't go off track, so that he can get her back home. So I was thinking to myself, what the Shastras say is perfectly right. At the fag end of life, we can't see, we can't hear. What to speak of seeing and hearing? We can't even remember our own husband or wife with whom we have stayed for 50 years. So is that the age when we are going to start the process of bhakti? Is that the age when we are actually going to perform devotional service unto God for which the human life has been given? Are we going to wait till the fag end of life? No. That is why Prahlāda Mahārāja says, Kaumaram. Start from childhood. Start from 0 to 5. And he says, Pragyo. Someone who's intelligent will only do this. Dharman Bhagavata Iva. Take this process of devotional life from a very childhood phase. Don't wait till the fag end of life. Sripad Ayendra Prabhu would make the same point. He would say that don't wait till the fag end of your life when you realize, when bodily problems will make it difficult for you to realize the aim of human life. Time is now, need is enormous. Jiva Jago, Ayendra Prabhu would say. So this holds true for everyone. The reason we are taking this verse is it is mainly focused for the youth. And we should congratulate and we should be proud of ourselves because we have not missed the boat. For those who are in their 30s and 40s, they have missed the boat, because this verse says Kaumaram Achare. Bhakti should be practiced from a young age. But we have not missed the boat. We are still in the boat. We can still practice bhakti from now and fulfill the teachings of Prahlāda Mahārāja. Such an important point. So bhakti that is performed in this age is like gold, very priceless and very invaluable. And that is why you see Martin Luther King. The other day I was reading, Martin Luther King makes a very interesting point. He says that we are living in a generation where we have the ship, a fully loaded ship with all the missiles and all the luxuries and all the amenities, but only thing lacking for the ship is the compass. You see, if the ship doesn't have a compass, there's no use, because the ship cannot go anywhere without having a compass, without having a direction. The ship cannot go anywhere. Similarly, we are living in a generation where we have all the amenities. We have the best house, we have the best cars, we have the best facilities, we have everything to the best. It's at the pinnacle. But the only thing that we are lacking is the compass. Only thing we are lacking is direction in human form of life. Just like when we buy an electronic gadget, a manual comes with it. Why is the manual given? So that we read the manual to understand how we should use that electronic gadget. If it's an iPhone or an oven or a TV or whatever it is, there is a manual that comes. We read that manual to understand how to use that electronic gadget. Similarly, dear devotees, with this human form of life, we get the manual of the Shastra. We get the manual of Bhagavad Gita. We get the manual like the teachings of Prahlāda Mahārāja. We study that teachings to understand how we should use human form of life. Just like we study the manual and understand how to use the electronic gadget, similarly, we study the Shastra to understand how we have to use human form of life. So the Shastras are very important. And for this reason, Srila Prabhupada makes this point that anyone, he says, anyone who follows this to the core is a Mahatma. Anyone who imbibes these principles in his life is called as Mahatma. Mahatmanastu maam partha daivim prakritam ashrita. Daivim, daivi means internal. Daivim prakritam ashrita, such a person who takes shelter of the internal energy of the Lord, takes the shelter of the Supreme Lord through the practice of devotional service, he is a Mahatma. He is a great person. So nowadays we find this title of Mahatma is given to anyone and everyone. But the Shastra says no. Bhajati ananya manaso, someone who takes shelter of Krishna's internal potency and does ananya bhajan, one-pointed bhajan, one-pointed chanting of the holy names of the Supreme Lord in the association of devotees, such a person is called as Mahatma. Mahatmanastu maam partha. So you see, in Sanskrit, everything has a proper meaning. Like, for example, in Sanskrit, for a devotee, the equivalent for a devotee is called as bhakta. We would have all heard. It's called as a bhakta. And the bhakta, the path that he performs is bhakti. He performs the path of bhakti to please Bhagavan by reading Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. So you see, everywhere is bha, and that bha stands for Bhagavan. So bhakti is that process that connects bhakta to Bhagavan by reading Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And as we all know, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is only Krishna who says, I am Bhagavan. Krishna says in the 7th chapter of the Gita that there is no truth superior to me, which means Krishna says, I am Bhagavan. And naturally, if Krishna is Bhagavan, this term bhakta can be used only for Krishna, because this term of bhakta can be used only for Bhagavan. Because Bha stands for Bhagavan. And Indra, Chandra, Agni, Vayu, Varuna are not Bhagavan. They are demigods. So someone who is worshipping them cannot be technically called as Bhakta, because the Bha stands for Bhagavan. So it is the path of Bhakti that the Bhakta performs to please Bhagavan by reading Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And the place where this is performed is called as Bhavan. In Sanskrit, Bhavan means a house. So that place where Bha, that is Bhagavan, is kept in the center is called as Bhavan. And if you remove the bha, what is left out? One, which means forest. And who lives in the forest? Animals, which means that house where the performance of bhakti, the performance of devotional life, where God is not kept in the center, that life is not different from forest. Now, that house is not different from a forest. And who lives in the forest? Only animals live in the forest. So you see, Sanskrit is such a beautiful language, which in everything that it quotes, it brings us back to the point of besieging and performing devotional service unto Bhagavan. So that house where bhakti is performed unto Bhagavan is called as Bhavan. And if God is taken out, it's one. And one means forest. And in forest, only animals live. So we have the option whether we want to live in a Bhavan or whether we want to live in a one and become an animal. So Shastra is very beautiful. So in this way, Bhagavatam time and again keeps reiterating the same point. In the 11th canto also we find Labdhva sudurlabam idam bahusambhavante manushyam arthadam anityam apiha dhira turnam yatetana patet anumrityu yavan. Canto 11 chapter 9 text 29 Bhagavat. Labdhva sudurlabam. How is human life? Sudurlabam. It's not rare, extremely rare. Sudurlabam. Like for those who were there in our last week's discussion of Govardhan, we made this point of Suyavasa, of Subhash, of Sunil, as to how Su is the prefix. It means Sushtu, or very rare. So Durlabam means rare. Sudurlabam, extremely rare. Labdhva sudurlabam idam bahusambhavante. Why is it rare? Manushyam arthadam anityam. It is anitya. It is temporary. This bubble, dear devotees, this bubble of human life can break any time. There is no guarantee that we are going to die only at 50 or 60 or 70. This bubble of human life can break any time. And this is the verdict of the Shastra. Manushyam arthadam anityam. Apiha dhira. That's why it says Turnam. Don't waste any time. Turnam. As quick as possible, perform bhakti and guarantee your spot in the pastimes of Gauranga and Nityananda. Don't wait till the fag end of life. Don't waste lives like the animals and the human beings. Turnam yatetana patet anumrityu yavan. Such a beautiful verse. 11:9:29 Bhagavat. So the time and again we see Shastra is emphasizing on the same point that human life means performing bhakti from a very tender age of tender face, Kaumar Avastha. Adi Shankaracharya, he makes the same point. He says, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Mudamate. He says, oh fool, worship Govinda, worship Govinda, worship Govinda. Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, Punarapi Janani Jathare Shayanam. He says, oh fool, don't you have any shame? He's telling all of us. He's telling all of us. He's saying, oh fool, don't you have any shame? Punarapi Jananam, you have again and again you're taking lives, again and again you're dying, again and again you're sleeping on the lap of your mother. You have been doing this for billions of lifetimes together. Don't you have any shame? Bhaja Govindam, worship Govinda, worship Govinda, worship Govinda, oh fool. Don't waste this human form of life. Just worship Govinda. This is what Shankaracharya is saying. This is what Bhagavatam is saying. This is what Chaitanya Charitamrita says. This is what Bhagavad Gita says. All the scriptures, dear devotees, are loudly proclaiming the same point that human life means performing bhakti, amassing the spiritual bank account. Material wealth is important, but that doesn't mean we put spiritual wealth to the side. That is the most important. That is in the center. And we juggle all balls around the spiritual wealth that is keeping Krishna at the center. Bhagavatam time and again is making the same point. Even in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he says, Ata griha kshetra suta apta vittai janasya mohoya aham mameti. 558 Bhagavatam. He says, Shukadev Goswami is making this point. Ata griha. First, you buy a house, griha, then kshetra. To maintain that house, you need a job. Suta, then you have wife and kids. Apta, then you have relatives. Vittai, and to maintain everything, you need wealth. Janasya mohoya aham mameti. In this way, the living entity becomes trapped. He's in the cocoon. He makes his own web and he's just illusioned with one identity after another, to such an extent, so much so that he forgets the aim of human life. This is such an important point. This is applicable for every one of us. Shastra is meant not just for the adults, it is meant especially for the youth. Because the time is more, the energy is more, and the intelligence level is very high. So the fifth canto's Bhagavatam is making the same point, that with so many identities, we are illusioned, we are in that cocoon, and then we forget Krishna altogether. So the perfection of human life is giving our energy, our time, our sweat, our blood for the performance of chanting Hare Krishna and preaching about the message of the Supreme Lord by associating with the devotees and studying Shastra. This is the ultimate perfection of human life. We are not here to make it big in life, please. We do not want to make it big in life. The aim of human life is not to make it big in life, but it is meant to break the cycle of birth and death, period. This is the aim of devotional life. Manushya Jivan is not given for anything else. It's given for this purpose, whole and soul purpose, to break the shackle once and for all. Because for lifetimes together, we have been taking lives. And in animal life, in bird life, in insect life, we do not have intelligence to ask these questions. But it is only in human life that we can ask these questions and break the cycle of birth and death once and for all. So because we have so many identities, we are illusioned, and that is why we are suffering and we are disappointed and we have anxiety. Like, for example, if there is a drama, and in a drama one man is acting like a lady, there's a 30-minute drama and the man is acting like a lady, and when the drama is going on, everyone claps and everyone applauds and it's a thumbs up for his beautiful acting. But even after the drama, if he behaves like a lady, if he behaves like a girl, there are two things that's going to happen. First, people are going to mock him. And second, he's going to be uncomfortable because that is not his genuine nature. His genuine nature is to be a male, but he's artificially trying to be a female, and that's why he will be uncomfortable. Similarly, dear devotees, we are spirit souls. We are spiritual beings, and we are acting like bodies. Just like if the male acts like a female, is uncomfortable. Similarly, we are spiritual beings acting like bodies, and this is the root cause of unhappiness. This is the root cause of unhappiness, and this unhappiness can be removed once and for all when bhakti is performed from Kaumar Avastha. That is why Prahlāda Mahārāja is starting by emphasizing this point. Kaumaram acharet pragyo dharman bhagavata eva. Perform bhakti, perform real dharma. Don't be a dvipada pashu. Don't be a two-legged animal, but perform bhakti. Why? Durlabham manusham janma. Human life is extremely rare. Don't take it for granted. Sometimes we take it for granted. When we see abundance, something in abundance, we think that it's easily obtainable. But from the mathematical analysis that we did, it is not. It is only 4.7%. So we are extremely rare, and this human form is given for a purpose. So the reason we are unhappy is we are spiritual beings trying to be like bodies. Just like in the drama, the male tries to be a female and becomes unhappy. Similarly, we are spirit souls trying to be bodies, and this is the root cause of all the unhappiness. So we are not human beings with a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Such an important point. We are not human beings with a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Like, for example, if there is a cage, and in that cage there is a bird, and now this bird has been trapped in this cage for like years and decades and lifetimes together. It's just trapped at one place. And now after some time, if the door of the cage is opened, what should an intelligent bird do? He should fly his way out because he was trapped in the cage, and now the door is open. So any bird, without even telling, will fly its way back out of the cage to such an extent that it will never return back to that cage. Similarly, dear devotees, human life is that moment where the cage of repeated birth and death is opened. This is the last 5 minutes of our discussion. Please hear this very attentively. Human life is that form where the door of the cage of repeated birth and death is opened. It's open for all of us. Now it's up to us whether we want to fly our way back to Krishna, or even after the door is open, stay here in this world. Like Shankaracharya says, shamelessly again and again, taking birth and death and birth and death and birth and death. Krishna clearly says in the Bhagavad Gita, Natad bhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavaka yad gatva na nivartante tad dhamam paramam mama. He says, once you come back to my abode, there is no question of returning back. Which means if we fly out from that cage of material suffering, after getting a human form of life, once we fly our way out, there is no question of returning back to this world. So the choice is up to us. Krishna has given us the choice. Krishna has given a body that is suitable for God realization and ending the cycle of birth and death. Now it's up to us whether we use it or not. If we do not use it, our neighbors are not going to lose anything. Our parents are not going to lose anything. Our brothers or sisters are not going to lose anything. The only loser will be us. The only loser will be us. If we don't perform bhakti in this life, if we don't take this process seriously, if we don't chant and dance, no one is the loser. We are the loser. So it's up to us whether we want to be a winner in life by following the instructions of Prahlāda Mahārāja and taking bhakti from childhood, by regularly chanting, regularly hearing, or whether we want to just waste our lives and guarantee an animal body in the next life. Because the point is very clear. If bhakti is not performed in human form of life, next life is either a tree body or an animal body or an insect body or an aquatic body. It's guaranteed. But if you perform bhakti, little bhakti, then human life is guaranteed. But the perfection of human life is to end this cycle once and for all. So to wrap up our discussion, the last point that I want to make is Krishna consciousness is not a part of life. Krishna consciousness is life. Krishna consciousness is life. It's not a part of life. It is life. We juggle all balls around, whether it's our education, whether it's our work, whether it's our friends, everything is secondary. But the first most important center is Krishna consciousness. It is life for everyone, whether we are 0 to 5, whether we are 5 to 18, or we are in middle age, we are in middle age to old age, or whether we are in old age. Human life is given only for one purpose. It's not to make it big in life. It's to break this shackle of birth and death, period. This is the aim of human life. And all the Shastras are time and again making the same point. So with this, I would humbly want to stop here. But before I stop, I would really want to request all the youth there in this call that if any point of this whole discussion inspired, motivated, or touched your heart, then please promise that in the 5 days of Bhishma Panchak that is coming, the last 5 days of Kartik, the last 5 days of Chaturmas, if you have not performed the whole Chaturmas, if you have not even performed Kartik, but if we sincerely perform these 5 days, it is a guarantee that we will get the benefit of Kartik and all the 4 months. So these 5 days are very powerful. So if this discussion touched your heart, if it motivated and inspired you to some extent, then please promise and please guarantee that these 5 days we will make all endeavors to increase our chanting. We will make endeavors to hear more. We will make endeavors to speak more about Krishna and less about topics of this world. And to add to that, it is the week of Thanksgiving. So there is no school, there is no colleges. So there is no impediment. So we can go full on in the practice of Krishna consciousness. And we can actually give our thanks to Srila Prabhupada and Prahlāda Mahārāja, who have given us these beautiful teachings in the form of the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, which is titled Prahlāda Instructs His Demoniac Friends. Having said this, I stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.